and we have test Zion Daled.
Good.
At what point do leather utensils become susceptible to contracting tumor? A shepherd's pouch from when the craftsman edges it and trims it, and he inserts its drawstrings. Rabbi Yehuda says from when he attaches his loops. A leather tanner's apron from which he edges and trims it and attaches its sashes. Rabbi Yehuda has said from when he attaches its rings. A leather bedspread from when he edges it and trims it. Rabbi Yehuda says from when he attaches its strings. And a pillow and a mattress of leather are susceptible from when he fully stitches them and trims them. Rabbi Yehuda says from when he sews them and leaves them over in space smaller than hand 5 tefachim. Petilia is tame, but a chasna is tahor. Fruit covers made of leaves are tahor, but those made of twigs are tame. A wrap into which one places fruits and from which one removes them is tame, but if you cannot do so without tearing it or untying it, it's tahor. The leather glove of winnowers of wayfarers or flax workers is tame, but the glove of dyers of blacksmiths is tahor. Yossi says also the glove of bean grinders is the same as they. This is the general rule. A glove that is meant to hold things is tame, but that which is used because of preparation is tahor.
Perspiration, yeah. Okay.
For perspiration, right.
Okay. Malkut shel bakar. So the blinders of an ox, the chasim shelo, and also its muzzle, the madaf shel devorim, and the shelf of madaf is a shelf usually, but what it is, it's more like a nafnaf. It was a flat wooden object that we placed under a beehive, used to drive away the bees in the hive when one wanted to collect the honey. You'd collect cattle dung on it and the smoke and burn it, and the smoke of the burning dung would drive the bees out of the hive. So okay, and the menafa and a fan. So an nafnaf, when something that you use for fanning a flame, for example, it would be a common thing, or something that you would wave in front of your face to cool yourself on hot days. Okay, either way, it doesn't have any kind of receptacle. So all of these harei elu tahorim. Okay, all of these keilim made out of wood or leather have no receptacle and are therefore tahor. Kisoi shel kufsa, the cover of a jewelry box is tame. Why would that be? I'm guessing because it's going to have, the lid is going to be used as a receptacle. Hold on, as a general rule, says the commentary, the covers of containers are not susceptible to tumah, but since it's not attached to the container. However, if the cover is clasped and fastened onto the container, it's susceptible to the tumah based on the rule that anything attached to that which is tameh is itself tameh. Okay, so the reason why the cover of a jewelry box is susceptible is because it serves the box both when the box is in active use and when it's not. For as explained above, the cover remains on the box not only when the box contains jewelry, but also when the box is empty. So it is viewed as part of the box, even though it is not actually connected to it, and it is susceptible to tumah as the box itself is. Okay. However, kisoi kamtera. So kamtera is a clothing chest. So that cover is tahor. The contrast over here is that because the cover is not fastened onto the chest and was used to cover the chest only when there was clothing inside it, but not necessarily when the chest was empty. So since the cover does not serve the clothing chest at all times, but only when it's in use, it's not viewed as part of the chest and is not susceptible to tumah, even though the chest itself is. All right, moving on in the Mishnah. Kisoi teva, kisoi teni v'hamachbesh shel charash. Okay, there's a list of about 100 things over here, and I think we should jump just to the end of this paragraph of the laundry list, and it's harei elu tahorim. Everything over
the
here.
General rule. This is the general rule. Right.
Okay. Well, before we get to the general rule, I'm just going to say that these things are all tahor. So we're going to go through the list now, and with the understanding that we're going to say that these are all tahor. So the cover of the chest, which is kind of like we just saw now. Okay, so teni, the cover of a teni basket, machbesh shel charash, and the carpenter's press. Okay, so looking at the kisoyim, the two lids that we saw, the general rule is that they are tahor. The carpenter's press is a press that carpenters use to straighten out warped pieces of wood for use. So you put, so it's used to push down. And so even though it's a kind of a flat, it's basically wooden flatware. Now you might, so why would you have thought that it's that it might be tameh? If the press was to remain on the table even when the table was not in use by the carpenter, it too would be susceptible for tumah. It's a tumah, just as the cover of a jewelry box is susceptible to tumah as part of the box that we just saw above. In fact, however, the press is placed on the table only when the table is in use. So therefore, the press is not considered part of the table and is therefore impervious to tumah. Okay. Next case. Keses shetachas hateva. A cushion placed under a chest, the kimron shela, and its covering. Also, Keilim that are only placed there when the tameh kli is in use, but not when it's not in use. But anglin shal sefer, the case of a scroll, Beis haneger, and the housing of a doorbolt. Okay, I'm interested in that Beis haneger. The housing of a doorbell, the housing of a lock, and the housing of a mezuzah. So, right, we know what the neger is. That's the metal peg that's inserted into a hole in the threshold behind the door in order to prevent it from being opened. So let's just see the explanation. These are all covers. None of them are susceptible to tumah. The reason is that they serve utensils that are attached to a structure that is attached to the ground, and the mezuzah case itself is attached to the house. So anything intended to be attached to the ground or something else that is attached to the ground is not susceptible to tumah. Okay, and since the utensils themselves are not susceptible to tumah, their housings certainly are not. All right, onwards. Tik nevalin, the case for liars, tik kinoros. So the cases over here, these are not, even though they look like a receptacle, they're not designed to make it easy to carry the contents, but are just used to protect the instruments from damage. So as we've seen before, so they're not something that's being used by somebody, by a person to help you to carry it around. It's just there to protect the other kli, and therefore, since they only service the instruments when the instruments are not in use, so therefore they're not susceptible to tumah. Okay, Amum shel godle mitznafos. That's the form of a turban maker. So it's like a head that you have under a shaitel. And it's something that you form that you can shape the turban on. So again, it's only being used when it's only for the kli when the kli is in use. So it's not it's servicing the kli rather than the person, which means it's tahor. A Markov shel zamar, the play horse of a singing minstrel. That's it's a wooden rendering of a horse used by clowns and entertainers as a prop, like a modern day children's stick horse.
Right.
So it does not have a kli, and it is not it does not have a receptacle, and therefore it's not tameh. Revius shel alayas, the revius is a kind of a musical instrument used by the wailer, a pair of long wooden sticks or boards which would be knocked together in time to music. So it's not susceptible to tumah because it lacks a receptacle and serves only humans but not other objects at any time. Further, genognis ani, a poor man's sunshade. So this is a contrivance that a poor man would use to shield himself from the sun. It was either a piece of wicker work that he would set up over himself or a handheld parasol. In either case, no receptacle and is not susceptible to tumah. Samochos hamita, the supports of the bed, wooden beams that would be placed underneath the bed frame to support it. Now the bed itself, of course, is susceptible to tumah, but these are not because they're flat and they serve the bed only when it's in use. They're not needed when it's not in use. Okay, tfus shel tefillah, the form of a tefillin casing. Okay, the wooden block that's used to shape the casing that holds the batim. Okay, so the leather would be boiled to soften it, and the square tefillin form would be pressed into the leather to form the casing. Okay, so similar to the turban thing, it's not susceptible to tumah because it lacks a receptacle and it serves the tefillin only when it's in use. And also the form of garment makers, Amon shel ose susos. So for similar reason as we saw with the tefillin and with the turban makers. Right? Elu tahorim. These are all tahor. Now let's have our general rule. Thank you. Klal Amar Rabbi Yossi. Kol mishamshav shel adam b'shas melacha v'shelo b'shas melacha tameh. So things that a utensil that services the Keilim of people, both when they are in use and when they're not in use, is tameh. But if it's only of use to the kli when it's not in use, or if it's only when it is in use, that's also tahor. So it's got to be used all the time in order to be considered an appendage of that other kli. All right. Tik hasayif v'asakin v'apigyon. So now we're dealing with cases and covers, cases versus covers. So we'll see the general rule over here is that a case is going to be tameh, but a cover is not. A case being something that's used for storage and helps the person to carry it or something like that. That is going to be tameh, but something that's just used to protect the kli when it's not in use, that's going to be tahor. So the sheath of the sword or sakin v'apigyon or tik misperes or of a, so it's knife, a double-edged knife, and shears, misparaim or scissors, v'atar or a razor, tik mikhol or the case of a makeup applicator, or beisach mikhol, or the so let's just get the jump again. What's going to be the halacha, because we're going to have a laundry list here. These things are all tameh. We'll see in a second why. We'll get an explanation. The container for the eye cream, the tik machtev, the case for a stylus, usrun tek, a compartment case, tik tavla uskurtia, the case for an astronomical tablet or a skurtia. Base achitzim, or a quiver for arrows, a base of pagoshos, or a quiver for broad arrows. All of these things are tameh. So the commentary explains on the bottom of 720, all of the above casings and coverings qualify as receptacles and are thus susceptible to tumah. The novelty of the ruling is as follows: the sheaths and casings are actually open at both ends, like an open tube, and are not receptacles in the simple sense. However, since they serve to encase and protect something, they are indeed considered halachic receptacles, and as such, they are subject to tumah on a biblical level. So that's according to Chazon Ish. Alternatively, since the above sheaths and casings were open at the bottom, they are indeed considered to lack receptacles. Nevertheless, they're susceptible to tumah because they service other utensils, both when in use and when not in use. So it's easy to see how some of the above utensils service other utensils both when in use and when not in use. A quiver for arrows, for example, is used both to carry the arrows into battle when in use and to store the arrows when not in use. On the other hand, sheaths for swords and knives and some other utensils listed above do not seem to fit that classification. Some suggest the following: since the utensils housed in these cases were either small or very expensive, they were treated with great care. So while using these utensils, if the owner would pause in his work, he would replace the utensil into the case, even if only momentarily. Thus, the case was kept on hand and serviced the utensil even while the utensil was in use. Okay. Now, tik symphonia, the musical instrument, that metallic instrument, depends where the opening is. If you put it in from the top, the case is tameh, because then it's basically a carry case. But if you insert it from the side, then it's tahor, because it's no longer a carrying case. If you try and carry it by the case, it'll fall out. So in which case that shows that if you're inserting it from the side, it's just to protect the kli when it's not in use, but it's not a utility thing for carrying it around. Tik Keilim, the case of flutes, again, Rabbi Yehuda Metaher Mishpnei Shehu Nosna Mitzido. He says this is tahor because it's inserted from the side. So again, if it's inserted from the side, that means that shows that it's not being used as a carry bag. It's just there to protect it when it's not in use. Chipoi ha'ala, the cover of a mace, a keshes, a bow, a romach is a spear. Hare elu tahorin. These covers are obviously being used just to protect the weapon when it's not in use. It's not being used to carry it. And the general rule, as I mentioned when we started the Mishnah, is that whatever is used as a casing, or something that is that helps the person to carry it around when it's is going to be tameh. But if it's only used to protect it as a cover, that is going to be tahor. Okay. Now I'm switching into a new book over here because my volume splits at chapter 17. Okay. Mishnah Aleph. Kol klei bale batim. All the measures. Kol klei bale batim shiran verimonim. So this is talking about when do they lose their tumah. So these are like the wooden things, or the leather things, or sack. All of these utensils lose their tumah only when they can no longer hold pomegranates. When they've got when there's a hole in there that will spill pomegranates, because it's a common use to have pomegranates, and if it's still useful for carrying pomegranates around, then it's still tameh.
That's a large hole.
I'm sorry?
That's a large hole.
Yeah.
Right. It's not right.
Rabbi Eliezer on there, but Mashahen, he says, look at it exactly what they are. Look at the at what the kli is typically used for, and that'll tell you how big the hole has to be to make them tahor. Kupos hagananim, the measure of gardeners' baskets, shiran ba'agudos shel yarak. It's the size of bundles of vegetables. That's what's carried in them, and therefore that's what defines the hole. Shel balebatim. Household is beteven is bundles of straw. That'll be big. Mishal balanim, and if it's a basket of a bathhouse attendant, it's gavaba, thin straw, because that's what they use as kindling for the boiler. Rabbi Yeshua mer kulan verimonim. Rabbi Yeshua says it's forget about look at trying to distinguish between the things. All of these things is a whole the size of pomegranates, because we don't want to fuss with trying to work out what the general use is. Standard rule is always the size of pomegranates.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay.
Keilim, Yud Gimel Hey. Now you have to go back to the others.
Yeah.
Okay. Yud Gimel Hey. A needle whose eye or point was removed is tahor. If one prepared it for stretching, it is tameh. A needle the size of sack makers whose eye was removed is tameh, since one writes with it. If its point was removed, it is tahor. If it was used for stretching, then either way it is tameh. A needle that has become rusty, if the rust obstructs the stitching, it is tahor, but if not, it is tameh. A small fork that one straightened is tahor. If one bent it, it reverts to its former state of tumah. Wood that serves metal is tameh, and metal that serves wood is tahor. How so? A gate key of wood whose bit is of metal, even when one is tameh. A gate key of metal whose bit is of wood is tahor. A ring of metal whose signet is amag is tameh, and a ring of amag whose signet is of metal is tahor. The tooth of a plate or of a gate key or of a standard key is tameh on its own. Regarding Ashkelonian grabnels that broke, but their hook remains intact, they are tameh. A pitchfork, a winnowing fork, a rake, and similarly a head comb that one had their prongs removed and one replaced them with a prong of metal, they are tameh. And concerning all of these, Rabbi Yeshua said the scribes have introduced a novel principle, and I cannot answer it.
Yeah. That's it?
That's it? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And now we have Aleph Tet. Between the ulam and the altar is holier than it, in that kohanim with blemishes or untrimmed hair may not enter there. The hekel is holier than it, in that one whose hands and feet are unwashed may not enter there. The holy of holies is holier than that, then they, in that no one may enter there except the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur at the time of the service. Rabbi Yossi says with regard to 5 matters, the area between the ulam and the altar is on a par with the hekel, that those with blemishes or untrimmed hair or those who have drunk wine or with unwashed hands and feet may not enter there, and they must remove themselves from the area between the ulam and the altar when the incense is burned. Okay, wooden utensils, leather utensils, bone utensils, and glass utensils. These flatwares are tahor, but the hollowwares are tameh. If they break, they become tahor. If they remade the broken utensils into new utensils, they are susceptible to tuma from then on. Earthenware vessels and necessary utensils are identical in the laws of tuma. They contract tuma and transmit tuma via airspace, since they contract tuma via a receptacle in their exterior, but do not contract tuma via their exterior. Their breakage is that of tahara. The smallest of the earthenware utensils in their bottoms or walls, which can rest without support, the measure for susceptibility of tuma is from enough oil to anoint an infant, and up to a log. Utensils containing from a log up to a saw are measured with a quarter log. Utensils containing from a saw up to 2 saw are measured with a half log. Utensils containing to 2 saw up to 3 and up to 5 are measured with a log, and these are the words of Rosh Shmuel. Rabbi Akiva says, I do not assign them measurements, rather small earthenware utensils in the bottoms of walls which cannot rest without support. The measure for contraction of tuma is enough oil to anoint an infant, and this applies up to utensils the size of small pots. Utensils from the size of small pots up to loadium barrels are measured with a quarter log. Utensils from the measure of loadium barrels up to lechium barrels are measured with a half log. Utensils from the size of lechium barrels up to large casks are measured with a log. The Zohar HaMazaka says large casks, their measure is 2 logam. Galium for glass and small barrels, their measure is from the bottom to the smallest amount, and they have no walls.
Okay.
For us. Go. Above. If a woman had previously given birth and one who had not previously given birth were the wives of 2 men, and they were now gave birth to 2 males, the one whose wife had not previously given birth must give 5 selim to a Kohen. If they gave birth to a male and a female, there is nothing here for the Kohen. If the son died within 30 days, even though he had given to a Kohen, he must return 5 selim to him. After 30 days, even though he had not been given, he must give. If he died on the 30th day, it is like the day before it. So Rekiva says, if he gave, he does not take it back, but if he did not give, he need not give it. If the father died within 30 days, it is presumed that the son had not been redeemed until he brings proof that he was redeemed. After 30 days, it is presumed that he had been redeemed until they tell him that it was not redeemed. If he has himself to redeem and his son to redeem, he takes precedence over his son. Rabbi Yehuda says his son takes precedence over him, for his obligation is incumbent upon his father, but his son's obligation is incumbent upon him. The 5 selim of the son are in the Tyranian mana. The 30 selim of the slave, and the 50th of the violator, and the seducer, the 100 of the one who defames his wife, are all in the shekel of the sanctuary in the Tyranian mana. All of them may be redeemed with money or in its equivalent, with the exception of skelim. One may not redeem either with slaves, with loan documents, or with land, and similarly not in the case of unconsecrated objects. If he wrote to a Kohen that he owes him 5 selim, he is obligated to give them to him, but his son is not redeemed. Therefore, it is a Kohen wishes to give him the gift, he may. If one sets aside money for the redemption of his son and it is lost, he is responsible for it, as the Pasuk says, he shall be yours and you shall redeem.
Okay.
On to Sanhedrin. Okay. Zion of. Bet. 4 executions were given to the court: stoning, beheading, and strangulation. But Shimon says burning, stoning, strangulation, beheading. This is the procedure with those who are stoned. We did this yesterday, I think.
Yes, yeah, do friends who are on bets.
I'm sorry, bet. This is the procedure for those who are burned. They place him in menorah up to his knees and place a scarf around inside a soft one and wind it around his neck. This one pulls toward himself and this one pulls toward himself until he opens his mouth. One melts a bar of lead and pours it into his mouth, and it descends into his bowels and burns his intestines. Rabbi Yehuda says if he dies in their hands, they have not fulfilled the commandment of burning. Rather, they force open his mouth with tongues. One melts a bar and pours it into his mouth, and it descends into his bowels and burns his intestines. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok, it once occurred with the daughter of a Kohen that she committed adultery. They surrounded her with bundles of branches and burned her. And they said to him, because the court at that time was not expert. It's a terrible way to go.
I know. I was just thinking that sounds Really, really horrible.
Uh,
Oof.
This is the procedure for those who are beheaded. They decapitate him with a sword in the manner in which the government does. Rabbi Yehuda says this is a disgrace. Rather, they place his head on a block and cut it off with an axe. They said to him, there is no more disgraceful manner of death than this. This is the procedure for those who are strangled. They place him in a menorah up to his knees and place a coarse scarf around a soft one and wind it around his neck. This one pulls himself toward himself, and this one pulls toward himself until life departs. Okay. These are the ones who are stoned, one who cohabitates with his mother or his father's wife or his daughter-in-law, and his male or an animal, or a woman who brings an animal upon herself, a blasphemer, an idolater, one who offers up his children to Molech, a practitioner of Ob or Yidoni, one who disgraces the Sabbath, one who curses his father or mother, who habitates with a betrothed in the Ara, one who instigates an individual to idolatry, one who leads astray an entire town, a sorcerer, and a ben Sora Maora. One who cohabitates with his mother is liable for having transgressed the prohibition of a mother and father's wife. If Yehuda says he is liable only for a mother, one who cohabitates with his father's wife is liable for his father's wife and for adultery, both during his father's lifetime and after his death, whether she was betrothed or married. One who cohabitates with his daughter-in-law is liable for his daughter-in-law and for adultery, both during his son's lifetime and after his death, whether she was betrothed or married. One who cohabitates with another man or an animal or a woman who brings an animal upon herself, that the person sinned, what did the animal sin? But because the person came to disaster through it, Scripture said that it should be stoned. In addition, so that it should not occur that the animal passes in the street and people say, "This is the one who through whom so and so and was stoned."
Okay.
Okay.
Sukkah.
Okay. Gimel Yud. If a non-Jewish slave, a woman, or a minor recited Hallel for someone, he must repeat after them whatever they say and let it be a curse upon him. If an adult was reciting for him, he must respond after him, Hallelujah. In a place where they are accustomed to repeat, he repeats. Where their custom is to recite it as it is, he recites as is. Where the custom is to recite a blessing after it, he recites a blessing after it, and everything must be done in accordance with the local customs. If one purchases a lulav from his friend during Shemitah, he must give him the esrog as a gift because it's forbidden to purchase it during Shemitah. Originally, the lulav was taken in the temple 7 days, and in the provinces it was taken 1 day. After the temple was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that the lulav may be taken in the provinces 7 days in remembrance of the temple, and the entire day of waving is forbidden. Okay. And we go to brachos. Okay. We have hey, Aleph. One should only stand up to recite the tefillah in a reverent mood. The pious men of earlier times would first wait an hour and then recite the tefillah so as to direct their minds to the all present. Even if a king would greet him, he may not return the greeting. Even if a snake were to be curled on its heel, he may not break it off. Then we mentioned the power of the rains in Who Revives the Dead and asked for the rains and the blessing of the seasons. And Abdallah and you may favor man with knowledge. But Akiva says one who recites it as an independent blessing. If Elias says in the thanksgiving. If one says your mercy extends even beyond bird's nest, and for the good which you do to us shall your name be remembered. We give thanks. He is silenced. If he went before the ark and erred, another shall take his place. He may not decline at such a time, but from where does he begin? To the beginning of the bracha where he fell into error.
Okay. And we're done.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too. Have a
wonderful
day.
Okay. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.